Welcome everybody to this lesson. This lesson is HTML documents, and we are gonna talk about what the HTML document is and what it does in the web page, right? So for the browser to render a website, we know that it needs HTML, right? So for us to be able to write HTML, what we need to do is to be able to write an HTML document, right? So what makes an HTML document? This is basically any document that has an extension of .html, right? So the steps involved in actually rendering a page on a browser is first we need to create the HTML. So we need to open a text editor. That's where we are going to write our HTML. So it could be as simple as a notepad, right? Application, or as a little complex as a Visual Studio Code, right? So we only need to open a text editor as our first step. And then what we do next is to be able to write the HTML code, right, inside the text editor or in the document that we are creating, right? So that's the second step. The third step is to save the HTML that we have just created, and we are going to save this as a .html file or document. And the next and last one is to be able to render or view the HTML that we have just created on a browser. So that's what we are going to do. And I'm going to start by creating this in a simple text editor such as Notepad, right? And then we're going to do the same thing in Visual Code, right? Visual Studio Code. So let's start by opening a Notepad, right? So I'm just going to drag this here. And this is a Notepad, right? All I want to do is let's first save this as like I said, an HTML document, and that is any document that ends in .html. So I'm just gonna save it as hello.html. So this, if I save this, it's an HTML document. So I'm just gonna put in here hello world, right? And then I'm gonna save this. So this creates the HTML document with the name hello world, right? So I'm gonna open a new HTML, sorry, a new browser tab. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna drag the document inside this. So I'm just gonna drag and drop this, the file that we just created. And then you can see that it creates, it renders the HTML that we just created and it reads the content onto the browser. So you can see that it reads the file, right, onto the browser. So that's what the browser does. It's able to read HTML documents. So that is what we have done, and this we did through Notepad, right? We are gonna do the same thing, but in maybe Visual Code. So I'm just gonna do the same thing and pull up Visual Code right here, right? And you can see here that it's already pointing to the directory that the hello.html was created. So you can see that it's displayed. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call this index.html, right? And in this index, I'm going to put in a content as this is my first HTML documents, right? And maybe some exclamation marks, right? And I'm going to save it. It does the automatic saving, but just I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to open the document the browser again, and instead of hello.html, I wanted to read index.html, right? And I'm gonna open this up, and it says there's no file only because I misspelled the HTML. So I'm gonna redo that, and then I'm gonna open it up. And so it's able to render the content of the HTML onto the browser. So this is basically how we create HTML documents and how we render the HTML documents onto a browser. There are more advanced code editors that you can use, such as Sublime Text, right? Atom, Notepad++, whichever one you want to use to create your HTML document. Again, from our previous introductory chapter, we talked about how JavaScript and CSS work hand in hand with HTML to provide a better user experience. So, uh, we are going to be discussing that in later chapters, but just so I just can explain this, that for JavaScript, the extension for that will be the .js, and then for CSS is going to be .css extension. And we are going to look at that in later chapters, right? So thank you for staying with me throughout this short lesson, and we are going to be looking at how do we actually structure the HTML. What is the actual structure of an HTML? How do we use that structure to create the content that we want? So stay tuned and join me in the next lessons. Thank you very much.